The lie was supposed to last a week. 7 days. 2 plane tickets. 1 shared hotel room with 2 beds. That was it. I didn't expect it to rearrange the way I understood him or myself. It started because my ex was going to be there. I found that out 3 weeks before the trip, when I was already locked into a non-refundable vacation to Lisbon. I hadn't seen Mark in almost 2 years. Not since the messy, slow-burn breakup that left us both pretending we were fine while clearly not being fine. Apparently, he was going with his new boyfriend, the guy he'd started dating a month after we broke up. Right, I told myself I didn't care. Then I spent the next 2 days spiraling. That's when I texted Ethan. Ethan was my best friend. We'd met in grad school, survived bad roommates, worse jobs, and one truly unhinged road trip where his car overheated in the desert, and we had to sleep in it with the doors open. He was straight, at least that's what he always said, and aggressively normal about it. Dated women, talked about CrossFit like it was a personality trait, never flinched when I talked about guys. When I half-jokingly told him about Mark and the boyfriend, he replied with, "So just tell people you're going with your boyfriend." I laughed. Then I stopped laughing. "You wouldn't." I typed. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. I mean, I could. I stared at my phone longer than I want to admit. We talked it through on a call that night. The logic made sense in that dangerously convincing way bad ideas often do. We were already sharing a place to save money. It would keep Mark from trying to catch up. It would make things easier socially. And, according to Ethan, it's not like we'd have to do anything weird. Just act normal. That should have been my first clue. We landed in Lisbon on a humid afternoon, the air thick with salt and heat and something electric I couldn't name yet. The city was bright and loud and alive, tiled buildings stacked like sunburnt postcards. I was buzzing with travel energy and anxiety in equal measure. At the hotel check-in, the woman behind the desk smiled warmly and said, "Welcome, 1 bed or 2 for the couple." I froze. Ethan didn't. "One's fine," he said easily, sliding his card across the counter. I turned to him, eyes wide. He leaned in and murmured, "Relax. It's bigger. We'll survive." The room was nice, too nice. 1 king bed, a small balcony overlooking a narrow street where laundry fluttered between buildings like flags. I dropped my bag by the door, suddenly hyper-aware of everything, how close he was, how the room smelled faintly like citrus cleaner and something warmer underneath. "So," I said, forcing a laugh, "guess we're really committing." Ethan shrugged out of his backpack. "It's just sleeping. We've shared worse." True. Objectively true. Still different. That night, we went out to eat, and the pretending began in small, almost unnoticeable ways. He put his hand on my lower back when we walked into the restaurant. Not lingering. Not dramatic. Just there. Natural. The waiter didn't blink. When Mark showed up 2 tables away, my stomach dropped. Ethan noticed immediately. Without saying a word, he reached across the table and took my hand. Just like that. It was warm. Solid. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Mark saw us. His eyes flicked down to our hands, then back up to my face. He smiled politely, nodded, and turned back to his boyfriend. Ethan squeezed my fingers once. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded. I wasn't sure if I was lying. Later, back in the hotel room, we kicked off our shoes and collapsed onto opposite sides of the bed, staring at the ceiling. "That went well," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "We're convincing." There was a pause. Not awkward, just charged. "You know," he added, eyes still on the ceiling, "people are gonna assume things. About us. I know. You sure you're cool with that?" I turned my head to look at him. His expression was unreadable, calm but thoughtful, like he was weighing something internally. "I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't," I said. He nodded. Then, after a beat, "Good. Because, honestly, it doesn't feel that weird." That should have scared me. Instead, I felt something loosen in my chest. We turned off the lights. The city noise drifted in through the open balcony door. He rolled onto his side, facing away from me. I lay there, staring into the dark, aware of every breath, every inch of space between us. The lie had officially begun, and somehow, it already didn't feel fake. By the second day, we had rules. They weren't written down or even fully spoken, but they existed all the same. We didn't kiss in public. We didn't overdo it. No exaggerated affection, no performative nonsense, just ease, familiarity. The kind of couple people didn't look twice at, which, weirdly, made it harder. We walked the city endlessly, up steep streets that burned our calves, past cafes spilling espresso smells into the air, through plazas where musicians played for loose change, and tourists danced without shame. Ethan stayed close, not hovering, just aligned with me. When crowds pressed in, his hand found my back automatically. When a street performer asked where we were from, he said, "We're visiting together," like it was the most natural thing in the world. Every time, my body reacted before my brain could catch up. It wasn't physical. Not exactly. It was this constant awareness of his voice, his presence, the way he checked in without making a show of it. Like he'd slipped into a role that fit him too well. That afternoon, we stopped at a tiny beach just outside the city. Nothing dramatic. Pebbles instead of sand. Cold water. Sunburned tourists sprawled everywhere. We changed behind towels like teenagers and dropped our stuff near the rocks. Ethan came back wearing swim shorts and no shirt, and I immediately regretted having eyes. I'd seen him shirtless before. At the gym, on that road trip, once drunkenly, at a friend's birthday party. But something about here. Sunlight on his shoulders, salt air. How relaxed he looked, hit differently. "You good?" he asked, catching me staring. "Yeah," I said too fast. "Just jet lag," he smirked. "Sure." We waded into the water together, both hissing at the cold. At one point, a guy nearby asked us to take a photo of him and his boyfriend. When he handed the phone back, he smiled at us and said, "You two look great together." Ethan thanked him. I didn't correct anything. Later, we lay on our towels, drying off. I closed my eyes, listening to the waves, pretending my thoughts weren't doing backflips. "You know," Ethan said casually, "you're really good at this." "At lying?" I asked. "At us," he replied. "You don't tense up. You don't flinch. You just exist." I swallowed. "That's because I'm used to it." He turned his head slightly. "Used to what?" I hesitated, then shrugged. Being the one who adjusts, who fits into someone else's space. He was quiet for a moment, then softer. "You don't have to do that with me." Something about that landed heavier than it should have. That night we went out drinking. Cheap wine, loud bars, music that made conversation optional. At some point, someone bumped into me hard enough to spill my drink. I cursed, more startled than angry. Ethan was there instantly, hand on my shoulder, body angled protectively without being aggressive. "Hey," he said, calm but firm. The guy apologized and moved on. I laughed it off, but my pulse took a while to slow. Back in the room, we were both a little buzzed. Shoes kicked off, windows open, the city glowing below us. Ethan leaned against the balcony railing, looking out. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Does this," he gestured vaguely between us, "is it messing with you?" I considered lying. It would have been easier, but I was tired of easy. "A little," I admitted. "Not in a bad way. Just unexpected." He nodded. "Same." That surprised me. "Really?" He turned to look at me then. "Really look." "Yeah, I mean, I thought this would feel like acting, but it doesn't, and that's confusing." My heart kicked up. "Confusing how?" He exhaled slowly, like I don't know where the line is anymore. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward. Heavy. "We should probably reset," I said finally. "Like, make sure we don't blur things." "Right," he agreed. Too quickly. We got into bed after that, backs to each other, a respectful gap between us. I stared into the dark again, replaying everything. His hand on my shoulder, his voice on the balcony. That word, same, echoing in my head. Sometime in the night, I shifted. My foot brushed his calf. He didn't move away. Neither did I. We stayed like that, barely touching, for what felt like hours, every nerve in my body awake, every thought screaming and whispering at the same time. The lie was supposed to protect me. Instead, it was slowly peeling things open. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Ethan breathing, not snoring. Not loud, just there, steady, close. For a split second, I forgot where I was. Forgot Lisbon, forgot Mark, forgot the lie. All I knew was that my leg was still brushing his, that we hadn't moved away in the night, and that my chest felt strangely calm about it. Then reality crept back in. I shifted carefully, trying not to make it obvious. Ethan stirred anyway, rolling onto his back and blinking up at the ceiling. "Morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Morning." We lay there for a moment, neither of us rushing to sit up. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the room in gold. It felt intimate in a way I wasn't prepared for. Like this was a memory I'd keep whether I wanted to or not. "So," he said, stretching his arms above his head. "We survived night 3. Barely," I joked, forcing lightness into my tone. He glanced at me, smirking. "You gonna tell me you didn't notice?" "Notice what?" "That we basically cuddled without committing to it." I felt my face warm. "We did not cuddle." He raised an eyebrow. "You're right. It was a very masculine, emotionally detached calf touch." I laughed despite myself. "Shut up." But the joke didn't fully dissolve the tension. Something had shifted overnight, and we both felt it. We spent the day apart, mostly by accident. He wanted to explore a museum. I needed air, space, something to quiet the noise in my head. We agreed to meet up later for dinner, both of us pretending that distance didn't feel necessary. Walking alone through the city gave me too much time to think. I kept replaying moments, his hand in mine at the restaurant, the way he'd said same on the balcony, how natural it felt to wake up beside him. I hated how easy it was to imagine this being real, how dangerous that made it. When we met up that evening, something was different, subtler, quieter. Dinner was comfortable but restrained. We talked about stupid things, food, travel plans, a couple arguing loudly at the next table. Neither of us mentioned the night before. Then Mark walked in. I felt it before I saw him. That old, familiar knot tightening in my stomach. Ethan noticed immediately. He didn't reach for me this time. Instead, he leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. "You want to leave?" he murmured. I shook my head. "No, I'm fine." Mark spotted us. He hesitated, then walked over with his boyfriend trailing behind. "Hey," he said, polite smile firmly in place. "Didn't expect to run into you again." "Yeah," I replied. "Small city." His gaze flicked to Ethan. "You must be." "Ethan," he said, standing and offering his hand. Confident, calm. "Nice to finally meet you." They shook. I watched Mark take in Ethan. His height, his ease, the way he stood slightly in front of me without blocking me out. Something unreadable crossed Mark's face. "Well," Mark said eventually, "I'm glad you're happy." It wasn't an accusation. Or maybe it was. I couldn't tell. "I am," I said, surprised to realize it wasn't entirely a lie. After they left, I exhaled hard, like I had been holding my breath the entire time. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "Yeah," I said. Then, more quietly, "Thanks." "For what?" "For being solid." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Always." We walked back to the hotel in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. When we reached the room, neither of us moved toward our usual sides of the bed. Ethan sat down first, elbows on his knees. "Can we talk?" My pulse spiked. "About what?" "About us pretending," he said, "and how it's starting to feel less like pretending." I sat beside him, close enough that our thighs touched. "I was hoping you wouldn't say that." "Yeah," he said softly. "Me too." We sat there, shoulder to shoulder, the city humming outside. "I don't want to hurt you," he said finally. I swallowed. "I don't want to lose you." That was the truth, bare and terrifying. He turned to me then. Really turned, his knee angling toward mine. "If this is crossing a line, we should stop." I met his gaze, And if it's not? His jaw tightened like he was bracing himself. Then we have to be honest about what that means. The air felt thick between us, charged, no touching, no rushing, just the weight of possibility. Slowly, carefully, he reached out, not for my hand, but for my wrist. Gave me time to pull away. I didn't. His thumb brushed lightly over my skin. A simple touch, nothing explicit, nothing fake. And in that moment I knew, whatever we were doing, it had already stopped being a lie. We didn't kiss, not that night, not then. And somehow, that made everything heavier. Ethan let go of my wrist like it took effort. He stood, ran a hand through his hair, and paced once across the room before stopping by the window. "I need air," he said. Not an excuse. "A confession. I'll come with you," I replied instantly. He looked back at me, surprised, then nodded. We walked the city late when Lisbon softened. The tourist noise thinned out. Bars glowed warmly instead of loudly. The streets felt more intimate, like they were meant for conversations you couldn't have in daylight. We didn't hold hands. That felt intentional too. So, he said after a few blocks, "When did you know you were into guys?" I glanced at him. "That's a big question for midnight." He smiled faintly. "Fair." I thought about it anyway. Probably longer than I admitted. I came out late. I was good at pretending things didn't bother me. He slowed a little. "Does this feel like that?" "No," I said immediately. Then corrected myself. "It feels like the opposite. Like if I pretend now, it'll actually hurt." He stopped walking. I turned to face him under a street lamp, the yellow light catching the lines of his face, the seriousness in his eyes. "I don't know what I am," he said quietly. "I've always dated women. I still think I could. But this," he gestured between us, "this isn't nothing." My chest tightened. "I'm not asking you to label anything." "I know." He exhaled. That almost makes it scarier. We stood there, close but not touching, the city breathing around us. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything. If I wasn't pretending, if this trip wasn't an excuse." He hesitated. "Would you still want this?" I didn't need to think. Yes. The word hung between us, fragile and solid at the same time. Ethan stepped closer. Not rushing, not dramatic. Just closing the distance until there was barely any space left. "I don't want to fake this anymore," he said, "even if I don't know where it leads." My voice came out softer than I intended. "Then don't." That's when he touched me again. Not my hand, not my wrist, my cheek. His thumb brushed along my jaw, tentative, like he was checking for permission with every millimeter. I leaned into it. The kiss, when it came, was quiet. No fireworks, no movie moment desperation, just warmth. Pressure, the unmistakable feeling of choosing something instead of falling into it by accident. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. He pulled back first, breathing unevenly, forehead resting against mine. "Okay," he murmured. "Okay." Back in the room, everything felt different. Not charged this time. Settled. We got into bed without speaking, without negotiating sides. He turned toward me. I turned toward him. No pretending. He didn't wrap an arm around me. I didn't ask him to. But when I reached for his hand in the dark, he laced his fingers through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. I fell asleep like that, not anxious, not waiting for something to go wrong, just present. In the morning, sunlight woke us again. This time, he didn't pull away. Instead, he smiled, small and real, and said, "So, guess we're not pretending anymore." I smiled back. "No," I said. "Guess not." Once we stopped pretending, we immediately had no idea how to act. That was the funny part. You'd think crossing the line would make things clearer, cleaner. Instead, it turned everything slightly sideways. Not bad, just new. Like rearranging furniture in a room you'd lived in for years, and now bumping into things you swore weren't there before. We didn't announce anything. Not to strangers, not to Mark, not even to ourselves out loud. We just existed in this quiet, fragile in-between. At breakfast, Ethan reached for the jam at the same time I did. Our fingers brushed. He froze. "Sorry," he said automatically. I laughed. "You literally kissed me last night." "Yeah," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. Still recalibrating, that became our rhythm for the day. Little almost moments, hesitations followed by shy smiles. Like we were teenagers, stuck in adult bodies, relearning proximity. We took a tram up one of the hills, squeezed into a seat meant for 1.5 people. His knee pressed against mine the entire ride. Neither of us moved it away. At the top, the view was ridiculous. Red rooftops, the river stretching out like a ribbon, sunlight everywhere. Ethan stood beside me, hands in his pockets, quiet. "This place kind of ruins other cities," he said. "Yeah," I replied. Then added, without thinking, "I'm glad it's here." He glanced at me. "Me too." We walked for hours. No agenda, just wandering. At one point, he slipped his fingers into mine like it was an afterthought. I felt my chest tighten, but in a good way, the kind that feels like you're holding something precious and fragile at the same time. People noticed, not staring. Just those quick, knowing glances. We didn't correct them. That afternoon, we ended up back at the beach. Same pebbles, same cold water. This time, we lay closer. Shoulder to shoulder, his arm brushing mine whenever he shifted. "You ever feel like timing is a sick joke?" he asked suddenly. "All the time," I said. "Why?" He stared out at the water. "Because if this had happened back home, I don't know if I would have let it." That stung a little. I appreciated the honesty anyway. "Vacations make things feel safer," I said. "Temporary." He turned to me. "Is that what this feels like to you?" I met his gaze. "No, but I'm scared it might to you." He didn't answer right away. Then he sighed. "I don't want it to be." That was enough. For now, that night, back in the room, the tension shifted again. Less uncertainty, more gravity. We brushed our teeth side by side. Shared jokes. Moved around each other without flinching. When we got into bed, he turned toward me immediately. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." He hesitated, then rested his hand on my waist. Not roaming, not testing, just there. I covered his hand with mine. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Yes." We stayed like that for a long time, faces inches apart, breathing syncing up. I could feel his heartbeat through his palm. Steady. Real. "I don't want to mess this up," he murmured. "You won't," I said, then corrected myself. "Not by caring." He smiled at that. Small, vulnerable. This time, when we kissed, it lasted longer. Still gentle, still deliberate, no rush to escalate. Just the quiet certainty of choosing each other again. After, he pulled me closer, his arm sliding fully around me. I tucked my face into his shoulder like I'd done it 1,000 times before. It felt dangerously right. As I drifted off, one thought surfaced, clear and unavoidable. Vacation's end. And whatever this was already bigger than a week. The closer we got to the end of the trip, the louder reality became. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden arguments. No emotional whiplash. Just little reminders creeping in. Notifications from home, emails piling up, casual mentions of when we get back that felt heavier than they should have. On our second to last day, Ethan took a work call on the balcony. I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. The room was small, the door open, his voice low but tense. "Yeah, next Monday works. No, I'm back Sunday night." I know, we'll talk then." I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, that familiar knot tightening again. When he came back in, he looked different, not distant, just grounded somewhere else. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, then hesitated. "Just work reminding me I exist." I smiled weakly. Rude of them. He laughed, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. We went out anyway. Walked along the river, shared fries from a paper cone, leaned against a railing watching boats drift by. From the outside, we probably looked like any other couple winding down a trip. Comfortable, easy. Inside, I felt like I was balancing something delicate. Can I ask you something? I said eventually. He glanced over. You're allowed. When we get home, I began carefully, what happens to us? He didn't answer right away. That scared me more than a bad answer would have. I don't want this to disappear, he said finally. But I also don't know how to just slot it into my life like it's nothing, I nodded. I'm not asking for nothing. I'm asking for honesty. He stopped walking, turned to face me fully. Okay, he said. Here's honesty. I'm scared. Not of you. Of how much sense this makes. My chest tightened. That's not exactly reassuring. He stepped closer, hands sliding into my jacket pockets, thumbs brushing my hips. It is, though, because if this were just a vacation thing, it wouldn't scare me. I searched his face, looking for exits. Doubt. Anything. All I saw was someone trying not to run. That night, we didn't rush into bed. We sat on the floor with our backs against the mattress, legs tangled, talking like we used to before everything changed. Only now, there was no pretending we hadn't crossed a line. You know my parents are going to lose their minds if I even hint at this, he said. I snorted. Welcome to the club. He smiled, then grew serious again. I don't want to hurt you by going slow. I don't want to be hurt by being a secret, I replied gently. He nodded. Fair. We didn't solve anything that night, but we didn't pull away either. When we finally crawled into bed, he held me tighter than before, like he was memorizing the feeling. I pressed my forehead into his chest, listening to his heart. Steady. Still there. The next morning came too fast. Suitcases open, clothes folded. The ritual of leaving checkout. The woman behind the desk smiled knowingly. Hope you enjoyed your stay. We did, Ethan said, glancing at me. On the ride to the airport, neither of us talked much. My knee bounced uncontrollably. His hand found it, grounding me. We'll figure this out, he said quietly. I wanted to believe him. On the plane, as the city shrank below us, I realized something that both terrified and steadied me. Even if this fell apart, it had been real, and that meant I wouldn't regret it. Home didn't ease us in. It dropped us straight back into reality like the universe wanted to see if we'd flinch. Same city, same routines, same lives we'd left for a week and somehow outgrown. The first few days after we got back were careful, not distant, not cold, just cautious in that way people get when something fragile suddenly matters. We texted more than we saw each other, checked in, shared dumb memes, avoided the big conversation like circling something hot you're not sure you're ready to touch again. On Thursday night, Ethan finally came over. I'd cleaned my apartment like I was expecting company instead of someone who already knew where everything was. He noticed immediately. You vacuumed, he said, amused. I panicked. I admitted. He smiled, then stepped closer, arms wrapping around me without hesitation. The hug was solid. Familiar, not vacation soft, real life firm. I missed you, he said into my shoulder. My chest tightened. Yeah, me too. We ordered takeout. Sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, like we needed to renegotiate gravity. Halfway through the movie, his foot nudged mine. I nudged back. By the end, his arm was around me, my head against his chest. So, he said quietly, we should probably talk. I nodded, heart thudding. Yeah. He took a breath. I'm not straight. I don't know exactly what label fits, and I don't want to rush that part. But I know what I feel. And I don't want to pretend it didn't follow us home. Relief hit me so hard I had to blink. I don't need a label, I said. I need effort. You're getting that, he replied immediately. We kissed then. Not tentative, not rushed, just certain. The next test came sooner than expected. A week later, we ran into Mark at a mutual friend's birthday. I hadn't known he'd be there. My stomach flipped the second I saw him across the room. Ethan noticed. Didn't ask. Just took my hand. Mark's eyes flicked down, then up. This time, there was no confusion. Just recognition. Hey, he said. Didn't know you guys were still together. We are, Ethan said calmly. I squeezed his hand, grounding myself. Mark nodded slowly. Good. You look happy. I am, I said. Fully honest this time. After Mark walked away, Ethan leaned in and whispered, You okay? I smiled. Yeah, I really am. Later that night, lying tangled together in my bed, city noise filtering in through the window, Ethan traced lazy circles on my arm. You know, he murmured, that fake couple thing? Pretty solid audition. I laughed, turning to face him. Careful. Sounds like you're committing. He met my gaze, serious now. I am. I kissed him softly. Not dramatic. Not loud, just real. We'd started with a lie meant to last a week. What we brought home with us felt like something that could last a lot longer.